Okay, Senate will come to order. Yeah, it's pretty optimistic. Chair recognizes Senator from the 45th. What purpose do you rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Mr. President, isn't it true that there's approximately 19 bills left on the calendar, and we're sitting here working on House bills, and we'll probably be here to 8 or 9 o'clock tonight, and that while we're working on their bills, our bills are not even out of committee. And when we do go to committee, we sit there for an hour and a half, and they don't take a vote. Is that not true?
I trust your word on it, Senator. I know how frustrating it can be. Do not lose heart. We are a great state filled with great senators that rise above the pettiness. Stay true. Are you ready to read the next bill? Secretary read House Bill 398. Senate will take up our second bill for today.
House Bill 398 by Residents Battles of the 15th and others. The bill will be titled Enactment Chapter 17 of Title 47 of the OCGA relating to general provisions for the Peace Officers Annuity and Benefit Fund, so as to update a cross-reference to add a position eligible for membership in such fund to provide for a certain employer's contribution to such fund and for other purposes. Mr. President, auditor's certificate has been attached. That concludes the order.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 8th. Present the bill. Senator from the 8th, you're up next, I believe. Peace officers.
Thank you, Mr. President. I bring to y'all a little old retirement bill. This is House Bill 398 by the Chairman of Retirement over in the House. All this bill does is allow the police officers and annuity benefit fund to be extended to the investigators for the Georgia Dental Licensing Board. This will be, all the costs will be borne by them, be no cost to the state. If there are any questions, I'll try to answer them. Otherwise, I ask for your favorable consideration.
No question, Senator. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is the objection agreed to report of committee which fail pass the bill? Chair is none. Report of committee is agreed to. Should the main question be now put in objection, chair is none. Main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass? Question on the pass the bill. All those in favor of the bill vote aye. Those opposed no. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the pass of the bill, the yeas are 47, the nays are 0, and this bill, having received a constitutional majority, is therefore adopted. Secretary will read House Bill 419.
House Bill 419 by Representative Silcox of the 52nd and others, the bill we titled an act to amend Chapter 60 of Title 36 of the OCJ relating to general provisions regarding local government provisions applicable to counties and municipal corporations so as to enable the governing authority of certain counties to further regulate the use or ignition of consumer fireworks and for other purposes. Mr. President, Senate Committee on Public Safety offers the following substitute to House Bill 419, a bill we titled an act to amend Chapter 10 of Title 25 of the OCJ relating to regulation of fireworks so as to subject the use or ignition of consumer fireworks to general noise ordinances of counties and municipal corporations in certain circumstances for other purposes. Amendment 1 by Senator Harper the 7th and others offers the following amendment. Amend the Senate Committee on Public Safety substitute to House Bill 419 by replacing lines 4 through 6 with the following. For conditions to provide for the meeting notice requirements, to revise procedures and requirements concerning consumer fireworks for a drought declaration and for other purposes. Amendment 2 by Senator Unterman of the 45th offers the following amendment to amend the substitute to House Bill 419 by striking on line 49 the last Monday in May. Amendment 3 by Senator Martin of the 9th and others offers the following amendment. Amend the committee substitute to House Bill 419 by inserting following line 88. Any property where the use of consumer fireworks would create a fire damage hazard to any building or personal property located on adjacent property and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Chair recognizes Senator 56. Present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me begin by thanking the incredible work over the last couple years by the senator from the 7th and the senator from the 53rd. We have been working with all parties, and I believe today provide a grand compromise between our rural, our suburban, and our urban areas as it relates to fireworks. We have ACCG, and the fireworks industry. We have GMA, and we have the fire service, and we have everybody agreed upon the version that is in front of you. Let me tell you what we do in this bill. We allow for changes in local control. At the same time, we extend the time to a little bit later in the day for those that want to. We added 2 new holidays. We allow for local noise ordinances to be in place for the days that are not specifically outlined within the bill for holidays. Now, it can't be a separate noise ordinance just for fireworks, and they'd have to publish it well in advance, have a separate meeting, and adopt it in, so the local city councils or county commissioners would have to hear from their citizens and make sure they are responding appropriately. There will be signage at each one of the fireworks stands, whether it be the portable or the large fireworks stores, that will talk about what the local noise ordinance is, as well as things such as being a good neighbor, being safe, being cognizant of veterans with PTSD, as well as those who have pets and other challenges with loud noises. And last but certainly not least, our important amendment, important section about droughts. And there is amendment number 1 from the senator from the 7th that I support. And this is just clarifying the drought language in working with the proper agencies and the governor's office to assure that we are keeping people safe that time. I do not support Amendment 2 or 3, and it's not because I know they're not well-intentioned. I do it because I have learned in my 8 years of serving in this great body that we cannot let the perfect get in the way of the possible. So this is a very delicate balance and compromise. I'd appreciate your favorable support as we move forward. If there are no questions, I will yield the well.
You do have a couple of questions. The first question is the distinguished majority leader, the senator from the 46.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the senator yield?
I will yield.
You listed about 18 groups of alphabet soup that have agreed to this. How about the citizens of Georgia that we gave the right to buy and shoot fireworks? Any of them been consulted on you're restricting their abilities here?
Well, thank you, Mr. Leader. I appreciate your question as always. And yes, we have heard from an awful lot of Georgians. And the reason why we put the protections in place before local control would change, that they would have to publish that, they would have to have a hearing before it, was to ensure that their input was kept throughout.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 40th for a question.
Senator Yield?
I yield.
Senator, I appreciate you bringing the bill. My question is, we're restricting it from, except for the holidays, from 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. And if I understand, in the bill, if they want to go beyond 9 p.m., there'd have to be permission granted from the county or city, and they may have to require a special permit. Is that correct too?
Senator, what lines are you looking at?
I'm reading the summary here, and I'm trying to figure out. It's from 10 to 9, but local governments can still expand it to that if they wanted to, right?
Actually, it will go up to 11:59 p.m. if you look at the bill.
That's every day?
That allows it, again, but local noise ordinance, if they approve it, that will be the factor that will come into play.
Would you further yield?
I will further yield.
So they can act. All right, let me make sure what this. I'm trying to understand what this bill does different from current law. Right now, you can go to midnight. Is that correct?
Well, Senator, there are several days that you can go
No,
up
forget the holidays. For
other days you are going to 9 p.m.
That's what I just.
That goes to 11:59 p.m. So we're giving more time. However, then the local noise ordinance can bring that way back down based on that community's desire.
One further question?
Yes.
So in other words, we're saying you could go to midnight, but if DeKalb County or Sandy Springs says no, you're only going to be able to go to 9 o'clock, then we will respect their wishes.
Well, it'd actually be whatever their local noise ordinance it is, whatever that time is.
Okay, thank you.
No further questions, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Chair now will recognize Senator from the 7th to present his amendment, amendment number 1.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, I appreciate the good work of the chairman of the Public Safety Committee and all of those that have worked on this issue over the last couple of years, including the senator from the 53rd and others. It is a delicate balance. We have got before you what would be considered a very good compromise. The amendment that lays before you is an amendment that I have worked on to try to clarify the governor's ability to restrict the use of fireworks in the case of drought. This is a result of a conversation with the Georgia Forestry Commission, with the Department of Natural Resources, the Office of the Governor, and I would appreciate your support of the underlying amendment, and I will yield if there are any questions. If not, I yield the will.
No questions, Senator. Chair now will recognize Senator from the 45th to speak to amendment number 2.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. While I appreciate the work that's been done and the compromise for local governments with GMA and ACCG in the fireworks industry, everyone in this room knows when you bring up fireworks, there's going to be fireworks. Because since the day I came in this room, we have talked about fireworks. And to some of our dismay, they have proliferated. And unfortunately, they were very unregulated. And unfortunately, in the urbanized areas, like in my county of Gwinnett County, we've actually had houses catch on fire and burn to the ground. And it's because they're shot either in cul-de-sacs or neighbor to neighbor or retaliation. I've heard so many stories on Lake Lanier about neighbors who don't get along. Retired people who live on Lake Lanier, but then there's people that come on the weekends, and every weekend they've got fireworks. So there is a lot of controversy, and I appreciate over the years that we have refined what the original law was when we expanded the use of fireworks. And when we first did it, we got lots and lots and lots of emails. And I have to say that emails have cut back, but there's still the people who complain about their animals. There's still people that complain about PTSD. We still have the threat of fires and local governments not being able to control what is going on in their cities or counties. And what I bring before you today is amendment number 2. And I did not solicit any kind of emails but I started getting emails from some of your constituents, people that were not even in my district. And these are veterans. And the veterans, and in particular, the senator from the 20th, had a constituent, and I want to read what he wrote to me. And I have to say that I agree with them very much. That, you know, we walk the talk of honoring veterans, and we want to do the right thing for veterans, but here we are, when they're requesting something, you ignore them. The most honorable day for them, and the day that we take as a holiday, is Memorial Day. And you and I, we all know that we go to memorial ceremonies. Whether you're going to your local church, you're going to your local Vietnam War memorial, or World War II, or a memorial that honors every war that's ever been fought in the United States. And I believe with them, it's not a celebratory occasion. It's something where you are honoring veterans and their service and their families and the ones that are here and the ones that used to be here. But no matter what you're doing, it's an occasion of reverence. It's not when you get out fireworks and go to the lake and have a good time and shoot fireworks off. Hopefully, when we do walk that talk that we always talk about, honoring these veterans, that we acknowledge how much we love them, how much we revere them, what the sacrifices they've made. They give their lives for us, their families. They lose their family members. So I had a gentleman who wrote to me, and he says, no fireworks on Memorial Day. And that's what this amendment does. It excludes Memorial Day. My father died when I was 14 months old, when the Air Force jet he was piloting went down. And I'm assuming that that was during the Vietnam War. Like many other family members who lost loved ones in active service, to me, an explosion emulates the last sound before his death. Memorial Day is a day of reverent remembrance, not a celebratory occasion, certainly not appropriate for fireworks. In a legislative body that supports and honors our troops, it is disingenuous to bow to the fireworks industry instead of our fallen heroes. And I have to agree with him very much. And then he went on to write, on Decoration Day. This is a very famous poem. I know it's going to take just a minute, but I think just in honor of those veterans and listening to those veterans. This is from Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, Decoration Day. Sleep, comrades, sleep and rest on this field of the grounded arms, where foes no more molest, nor centuries shot alarms. Ye have slept on the grounds before, and started to your feet all the cannon's sudden roar, or the drum's rebounding beat. But in the camp of death, no sound your slumber breaks. Here is no fervent breath, no wound that bleeds and aches. All is repose and peace. Untrampled lies the sod. The shouts of battle cease. It is the truce of God. Rest, comrades, rest and sleep. Let me repeat that. Rest, comrades, rest and sleep. The thoughts of men shall be as essential to keep your rest from danger free. Your silent tents of green we deck with fragrant flowers. Yours has the suffering been, the memory shall be ours. So, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, I think we should approve Amendment Number 2 and honor those. And this is not the only letter I received. I received other letters from veterans. Let's keep Memorial Day what it should be, a reverent day, and honor those veterans and walk that talk that we talk about in here, honoring them. I'll be glad to yield for any questions, or I'll yield the well.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 47th for a question. Your seat mate.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would you yield for a question?
Yes, sir.
I appreciate it. Said, you know, one of the things I'll ask you, a lot of times when somebody passes, we have a celebration of life. Said,
Right.
do you know what a celebration of life usually means?
Unfortunately, I've had to do that, yes.
We both have. and it's painful. Said my father was a World War II veteran, very proud of his military service. He served in the United States Navy. My father-in-law was a United States Marine and served very proudly in Vietnam. Said I don't know how everybody celebrates life and death, but for me, you know, sometimes fireworks are appropriate to celebrate the lives that these people demonstrated and the sacrifices they made for their country. And I just ask you to honor that.
I don't disagree. I unfortunately have had many deaths, and I have many veterans in my family. But I also know that I have received emails, and this issue has come up when we've talked about medical marijuana and talked about PTSD. And not only is it affecting people's animals and their dogs and everybody else that gets so disturbed with fireworks, but in particular veterans who have PTSD, and that's why that gentleman wrote that letter to me, that it brings back the conflict, and it reminds him of when his father passed away in that jet and the last sound that his father probably heard. And I am very cognizant of that, and we have worked on this issue of PTSD for many years, and I think we should continue to work on it. If there's no further questions, I yield the well, and I ask for your favorable consideration to amendment number 2.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes Senator from the 9th to speak to amendment number 3.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I rise to present amendment number 3, and I do want to offer my gratitude to the Senator from the 56th for as he's worked through this bill. It's a very important bill, I believe, and I do believe that the compromise he has reached does meet most of the issues that I have with this bill for most of the year. And so I will be actually withdrawing this amendment, but I did want to talk about it. I also have an email from a constituent, a close friend of mine actually, who supported me in my early days when I was seeking this position, and it says, "Hi PK, wanted to send you something like this shortly after the 4th, but never got around to it. For what it's worth, I'm not in favor of the new law given for setting off fireworks. During the nights prior to and during the 4th of July, we were subjected to a barrage of loud explosive fireworks. I have been in actual artillery barrages, and although these pale by comparison, the peace of my house was negatively affected by them. We were virtually surrounded by the demented enthusiasts in 3 different locations, not including the one put on at Bridgewater subdivision around Lake Matthews. I see no benefit for such displays. If given the opportunity, I hope you would represent my position and repeal this law. Thanks for listening. I know I'm a voice in the wilderness here, seeking peace and quiet. Many of our veterans are seeking peace and quiet, and I understand. I actually spend most of my 4th of July holidays in Dawsonville, Georgia, at my mother-in-law's house with my wife and my family up on Lake Lanier. It is really not an issue there. For whatever reason, they've been firing off fireworks for years up there, and they do it in a way, and it's respectful. They stop at a respectful time, and there's not a problem there. But as you get into more urban areas and more suburban areas, it is becoming an issue. It is a safety issue, as the senator from the 45th mentioned. There was a house that did burn in Gwinnett County. And that's what the amendment of mine says. And that's what it basically approaches on this bill. It says that basically if you are firing off fireworks, you can be in agreement with this law on your property, firing off fireworks, and law enforcement doesn't feel they have the ability to shut you down if you're on your property doing this. In the right-of-way, it's illegal. But if you're on your property, the issue is we have 4 and 5 houses per acre in Gwinnett County a lot of times. There are parking lots and apartment complexes that are private property as well. And this one basically says that if there's an adjacent property where this is creating a fire hazard, unless you have permission by the property owner of that property, that you would not be able to set off those fireworks because you are creating that fire hazard, and they disagree with it. If they're in agreement, it's totally fine. That's all it would do. Like I said, I will go ahead and withdraw this when I get back to my seat, and I will yield the well.
Senator from the 40th had a question. You want to yield for it? Yeah.
I'll take it.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 40th.
Senator Yield?
I will yield.
Senator, isn't it true that I appreciate you yielding to the chairman on this particular bill, but isn't it further true at the end of the day, the way this bill is structured, it will restrict the number of hours if there's a local ordinance? versus what we presently have, and that would be an improvement for those of us, particularly here in the metro area, that want to have a restriction of hours. Is that not true?
That's true, Senator.
Thank you.
I yield.
Senator from, Secretary will read a late arriving amendment 1A by the senator from the 41st.
Amendment 1A by Senator Hinson, the 41st, offers the following amendment. Amendment 1 to House Bill 419 by striking line 700 on line 25 and replacing it with 400. That concludes the order.
Chair now recognizes senator from the 41st to speak to his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. Just trying to be helpful to the senator from the 7th. His amendment, right now under the committee sub, the governor, when there's a drought called, can ask for additional restrictions. The amendment 1 would say whenever the Keacham-Bryan drought index reaches 700 or above, the governor may, in consultation with the State Forestry Commission and others, have additional restrictions for fireworks. This amendment would simply change that 700 number to 400. You know, right now, 0 to 200 in the Keach-Bryan drought index, 0 to 200, the soil is moist. 200 to 400, leaf and litter begins to dry. And then 400 and 600, lower litter actively contributes to fire intensity and will burn actively. That's really the beginning of a drought stage. When you get to 700, 600 to 800 is associated with severe drought and extreme fire behaviors. So that's an extreme drought area. 400 would allow the governor, he does not have to do anything at 400. It would allow him at 500 or 600, especially if he sees that a drought is going to continue, to be able to take action. It just allows the governor greater latitude, and I think it would protect the public a little more actively than the other senators' 700 evaluation. So I urge you to adopt Amendment 1A, and I'll yield for questions.
Chair now recognizes the senator from Ocilla, senator from 7th.
Will the minority leader yield?
I certainly will yield.
Mr. Leader, is it not true that that I had worked with the Georgia Forestry Commission, the commissioner, our state forestry commissioner, the Department of Natural Resources, and others, and the recommendations that they recommended to me is basically the amendment that I offered and is laying before you with the level of 700, and that number comes specifically from our friends at Georgia Forestry because they believe that that was a level at which would be best addressed for this particular issue. Is that not true?
It is certainly inferred in your questioning that it is true. I do not know that for a fact. What I do know is that I have a lot of faith in this Georgia governor and the citizens of Georgia to elect governor with good common sense and be a person who would be very concerned for the welfare of Georgia citizens, and giving them greater latitude should be nothing that we should be concerned with. It would actually make sure that whoever our governor is would have the latitude to make restrictions a little earlier if we're in drought stages. But I certainly commend the senator from the 7th for his well-meaning and concern and attempt to protect the public.
I think I can tell you who that next governor is going to be.
And the president of the Senate may want to have as much latitude as possible, so I urge your support of the Amendment 1A.
Chair, hold on, we got a question. Chair recognizes senator from the 45th.
Mr. Leader, is that not true that I agree with the man standing behind you with that last statement? Is that not true?
I'll consider it endorsement of my amendment, but yes, I understand what you're saying.
Mr. Leader, would you yield for a serious question?
I will.
Mr. Leader, you and I come from the same area, and is it not true that this amendment that you're asking for, that in these urbanized areas where we do have houses literally burning to the ground, like the one in Norcross, Georgia, that potentially the governor's purview and his wisdom, that your amendment would allow and prevent things from that, like that, from happening in these urbanized areas? Is that not true?
Absolutely. Get away from any levity. This is a very serious issue, especially in the metro areas where the homes are cluster built or built very close together. a fire can spread very fast, but in any area of a state, a fire can spread, can take human life, and I think we should give the governor the tools to protect Georgia citizens. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you. Chair recognizes the senator from the 53rd, the Distinguished Rules Committee Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to tell you something that's going to be a total shocker to you. It's going to be surprising. You're going to say, wow, I didn't know that. Fireworks are dangerous. It's true. They're dangerous. So is crossing the street here. And let me tell you, there have been more fires created by the strike of a match than any firework ever. Ever. This is a fireworks bill. It's not a veterans bill. It's a fireworks bill. We celebrate occasions different ways, and one is with fireworks. In fact, I would say Gwinnett County probably has the most diverse community there, that they probably would be folks that would celebrate or want to celebrate Chinese New Year's, perhaps. And that won't probably be legal after this is passed. I would like to thank the effort of many people, especially the leadership of Senator from the 56th and the 7th, and working with Representative Silcox on the other side. We have all come together. We have actually kumbaya'd here with all these agencies on the Christmas tree that Senator from the 56th talked about. I would be very grateful if you would pass this bill with only one amendment, and that's Amendment 1. Even the senator from the 41st is his good intentions. The senator from the 7th has worked it out with all these agencies that are involved in anything regarding drought. The drought did not have any effect on the house fire. That had nothing to do with that. It was a match that lit the fireworks, maybe. I wasn't there. I appreciate the senator from the 45th. She's a leader of many causes. But I appreciate it if you would only support Amendment 1 and the bill. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Did you have a question? Senator has yielded. Chair recognizes Senator from the 9th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to ask unanimous consent to withdraw Amendment 3.
Senator is asking for unanimous consent to withdraw Amendment number 3. Is there objection? Without objection, Amendment number 3 has been withdrawn. I will tell you, speaking of danger, you have never experienced danger until you've been to Ocilla. In Ocilla, they fire off tater guns, shoot up tannerite. You know, I've been down there. I've experienced it. And it's a good time. That's it. Question is on Amendment 1A, authored by the senator from the 41st. Is there objection? There is objection. All those in favor of Amendment 1A will rise, stand, and be counted. If you are in favor of 1A, rise, stand, and be counted. This is the minority leader's amendment. Reverse. On Amendment 1A, the yeas are 19, the nays are 24. And Amendment 1A has lost. Barely, but it has lost. Is there objection to Amendment 1, authored by the senator from the 7th? Amendment 1 is adopted. Question now is on Amendment number 2. Is there objection? There is objection on Amendment number 2. Senator, Chair recognizes Senator from the 45th. What purpose do you rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
Please state your inquiry.
Isn't it true that I'd like to have the yeas and nays on the board for the veterans of the state of Georgia that have served us so well and their families?
You have that right, Senator. You'd like to move the yeas and nays?
I'd like to move the yeas and nays, please.
Shall the yeas and nays be sustained? 1, 2, 3, 4. Clearly, Clearly, 7 people have voted. All those in favor of Amendment 2, authored by the Senator from the 45th, will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary, unlock the machine. Chair recognizes Senator from the 46th. What purpose
Thank you.
you rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Isn't it true, while this amendment is well-intentioned, that we have worked very hard with all the groups in order to get a good compromise, and we'd ask for a red no vote on this amendment? Isn't that true?
Chair recognizes Senator from the 45th.
Is it not true that we need a green vote for the veterans in the state of Georgia? We need to walk the talk, that we talk about their appreciation.
Senator has great passion for which she speaks. On amendment number 2, the yeas are 29, the nays are 24, and amendment number 2 has been adopted by the Senate. Senator from the 7th, what purpose you rise?
Mr. President, if it's appropriate this time, I would like to make a motion to table House Bill 419.
Well, we're not in a committee meeting, Senator. Senator from the 7th has moved to lay House Bill 419 on the table. That motion is in order. Is there objection? There is objection. All those in favor of laying it on the table, vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary, unlock the machine. Chair recognizes Senator from the 40th.
Mr. President, isn't it true if we lay this on the table that we will not be restricting the sale of fireworks from what the present law states?
Senator has great passion for which he speaks. It's another very close vote. On the motion to lay the bill on the table, the yeas are 32 and the nays are 21, and this bill has been laid on the table. Thank you all for wasting an hour of our time. We're getting close to the end, boys. Secretary will read a committee report.
Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Rules has had a consideration of following legislation instructing to report the same back to the Senate following recommendation. House Resolution 51 do pass by substitute. House Bill 85 do pass by substitute. House Bill 735 do pass by substitute. Submitted by Senator Moles to the 53rd. That concludes the order.
Secretary will read now House Bill 494.
House Bill 494 by Representative Dempsey the 13th and others, a bill entitled Enactment Chapter 1A of Title 20 of the OCGA relating to early care and learning, so as to revise certain provisions relating to the safety of children in early care and education programs, to authorize hearsay and preliminary hearings regarding emergency closure of a program or the emergency placement of a monitor or monitors and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Education and Youth offers the following substitute House Bill 494, a bill entitled Enactment Chapter 1A of Title 20 of the OCGA relating to early care and learning, so as to revise certain provisions relating to the safety of children in early care and education programs, to authorize hearsay and preliminary hearings regarding emergency closure of a program or the emergency placement of a monitor, monitors, and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Chair recognizes the Senator from the 50th to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the Senate. House Bill 494 is agency legislation from the Georgia Department of Early Care and Learning. The primary purpose of this legislation is to make adjustments made necessary by recent changes in federal law. This is a summary of the legislation. It changes the current one-year criminal records check portability provision to include a mandate that any employee or director that has not worked in child care during the preceding 6 months within the portability period undergo a new background check. This change is required by federal law. It modifies the existing definition of employee to comply with recent changes in federal guidelines tied to a large existing fund source. It adds certain misdemeanors involving minors and other offenses as additional covered crimes that will exclude certain individuals from working in child care while children are present. It proposes other administrative and cleanup changes for consistency, clear understanding, and or better operations, and allows hearsay statements to be admissible in emergency temporary administrative hearings before the Office of State Administrative Hearings. Mr. President, if there are no questions, I'll yield the well.
Question on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection? Without objection, committee substitute is adopted. And now, does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is there objection? Agree in the Report of Committee which fail will pass the bill. Chairs none. Report of Committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? The objection. Chairs none. Main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass? Questions on the pass the bill. All those in favor of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary will unlock the machine. On the pass the bill, the ayes are 51, the nays are 0, and this bill, obviously, records constitutional majority is therefore adopted. Secretary will read House Bill 671.
House Bill 671 by Representative Donahue of the 30th and others, a bill entitled Enactment Code Section 4286 of the OCGA relating to special license plates promoting and supporting certain beneficial projects, causes, agencies, funds, or nonprofit corporations so as to establish a specialty license plate to benefit the Georgia Beekeepers Association for other purposes. Mr. President, Senate Committee on Public Safety offers the following substitute to House Bill 671, a bill entitled Enactment Chapter 2 of 540 of the OCGA relating to registration licensing of motor vehicles so as to revise the definition of authentic historical Georgia license plates and the use of such plates to establish a specialty license plate to benefit the Georgia Beekeepers Association and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Chair now recognizes Senator from the 50th present the Beekeeper bill.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. This bill would simply create a new license plate, save the honeybees. As you know, we talked a little bit earlier this session when you had the honey on your desk. Bees are a very important part of the ecosystem and our agriculture in our state, and I would urge you to vote for this legislation to help ensure their survival. If there are no questions, I'll yield the well.
Questions on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection? Without objection, committee substitute is adopted. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is there objection? Agree in the Report of Committee which fail will pass the bill. Chairs none. Report of Committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put in? Objection. Chairs none. Main question is ordered. All those in favor of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary will unlock the machine. on the passage of the bill. The yeas are 51, the nays are 0. And this bill, MC Rex constitutional majority, is therefore adopted. Secretary now will read House Bill 700.
House Bill 700 by Representatives Belton and 12th and others, a bill entitled an act to amend Code Section 23-374 of the OCGA relating to service cancelable loan fund and authorized types of service cancelable educational loans financed by state funds and issued by the Georgia Student Finance Authority so as to include graduate degree programs and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 1st present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 700 deals with the Georgia National Guard Service Cancelable Loan. Basically, it allows, if you're in the Georgia National Guard, it extends from 5 years up to 120 semester hours. The 120 semester hours is about equivalent to 6 years and allows it to be used instead of just for undergraduate coursework to be used in graduate coursework now. This is basically what it does, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
There are no questions, Senator.
Thank you.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is the objection agreed, report of committee which failed to pass the bill, chairs none, report of committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? Any objections, chairs none, main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass? Questions on the pass of the bill. All those in favor of the bill vote aye. Those opposed no. Secretary, unlock the machine. Senator from the 26th, your light is on. Is there? Push the wrong button. Been pushing buttons all day today. On the pass of the bill, the yeas are 50 and the nays are 0. This bill, MC Rex constitutional majority, is therefore adopted. Secretary now will read House Bill 701.
House Bill 701 by Representative Tanner of the 9th and others, a bill entitled an act to amend Code Section 4520-110 relating to definitions for drug testing for state employment so as to allow for testing for all forms of opioids and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 1st present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 701 brings the firefighters in our state up to standards relating to opioid and drug testing. The opioids are opiate-like drugs, and these are the semi-synthetic medicines like oxycodone, and et cetera. Mr. President, I'll yield the will if there are no questions.
Senator from the 26th, you wish to ask a question? You're recognized this time.
Senator Yield.
Yes, sir.
Senator, what are we changing? I understand we have an opioid crisis and stuff. This is not current law? Are you changing this from any other law that we have in the state dealing with drugs when
so
you
this
talk
has
about
to do
employment?
with, right. Thank you for the question. This has to do with drug testing and a state employee that is drug tested. So, and this has to do with firefighters and brings us up to federal standards, which went into place in January 1st, 2018. So, opiates are the naturally occurring substances. Opioids are opiate-like substances. These are the semi-synthetic medicines or pain medicines. So, it's just those are like oxycodone, which are semi-synthetic. So, man-made versus naturally occurring. That's all this does. If there are no further questions,
there is one more. Chair recognizes Senator from the 41st
Okay.
for a question.
Senator Yield.
Yes.
So did you say this only applies to firefighters to put us?
Yes, that is the particular designation. This has to do with, let me get this, hold on just a second. You know, I'm sorry, it's federally regulated transportation positions, which became effective January 1st, 2018. It's transportation, folks, so those are the ones that are being drug tested. In this particular instance, that's required by the feds.
And I support that effort, but do you have any idea how many people we're talking about and which agencies or where that additional funding would come from?
I don't know the numbers on that. I think it would be the lack of funding thereof if we don't do this.
No further questions, Senator.
Thank you.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is the objection agreed and reported to committee which fail pass the bill? Chairs none, reported committee is agreed to. All those in favor of the bill vote aye. Those opposed no. Secretary unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 51, the nays are 0, and this bill, item C, requires constitutional majority, is therefore adopted. Secretary now will read House Bill 718.
House Bill 718 by Representative Scott of the 76th and others, a bill entitled enactment subpart 2 of Part 1 of Article 16 of Chapter 2 of Title 20 of the OCGA relating to compulsory attendance, so as to excuse certain absences of students with parents in service of the Armed Forces of the United States, the Reserves of the National Guard, and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Chair now recognizes Senator from the 43rd to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. We honor you, we salute you, and we thank you for your service, are often words that we hear spoken to veterans. However, we often forget those who serve alongside them, and those are their family members. The most vulnerable and affected of the family members are the children. House Bill 718 allows for excused absences up to a maximum of up to 5 days per school year for these family members, children, to attend therapeutic sessions such as programs like Army Strong Bonds and Yellow Ribbon. These are therapeutic retreats and reintegration events with service members, veterans, and their families. Unfortunately, the effects of war extend far beyond the veteran. And with this particular bill, it will afford excused absences to visit with their families in these therapeutic environments. And if there are no questions, if there are questions, I will yield to questions. And if there are no questions, I will yield the well. Thank you. I ask for your favorable consideration of House Bill 718.
Any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is the objection agreed and reported to committee which fail pass the bill? Chairs none, reported committee is agreed to. All those in favor of the bill vote aye. Those opposed no. Secretary unlock the machine. On the pass the bill, the yeas are 53 and the nays are 0. And this bill, MC Rex Constitution majority, is therefore adopted. Secretary will read House Bill 739.
House Bill 739 by Representative Williams, the 168th, and others. The bill will be titled Enactment Subpart 1 of Part 6 of Article 6 of Chapter 2 of Title 20 of the OCGA, relating to employment of certificated professional personnel in elementary and secondary education, so as to give a short title to a code section relating to qualification for certain certificates for military spouses and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Chair recognizes Senator from the first to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 739 names this code section the Tracy Rainey Act. This code section was passed last year. This person, Tracy Rainey, was very instrumental in getting this passed, and we are naming this act that was passed last year in her honor, the Tracy Rainey Act. If there are no further questions, or if there are any questions at all, I'll yield the well. Otherwise, thank you.
Any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is the objection agreed? The Report of Committee which fail to pass the bill. Chairs none. Report of Committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? Any objections? Chairs none. Main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass? Question on the pass the bill. All those in favor of the bill vote aye. Those opposed no. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the pass the bill, the yeas are 50, the nays are 0. And this bill, MC Rex Constitution majority, is therefore adopted. Secretary now will read House Bill 740.
House Bill 740 by Representative Nix, the 69th, and others. The bill will be titled Enactment Subpart 1A of Part 2 of Article 16 of Chapter 2 of Title 20 of the OCGA, relating to improved student learning, environment, and discipline in elementary and secondary education, shows to require local school systems to conduct certain screenings, assessments, and reviews, and for other purposes. Mr. President, Senate Committee on Education and Youth offers the following substitute to House Bill 740. Bill will be titled Enactment Subpart 1A of Part 2 of Article 16 of Chapter 2 of Title 20 of the OCGA, relating to improved student learning, environment, and discipline in elementary and secondary education, so as require local school systems to conduct certain multi-tiered systems of support and reviews prior to expelling or assigning a student in preschool through third grade to out-of-school suspension for more than 5 consecutive or cumulative days during a school year and for other purposes. Amendment 1 by Senator Ligon III and others offer the following amendment. Amend the Senate Committee substitute on HB 740 by striking lines 33 through 35, inserting in lieu thereof the following. Deemed to have met the requirements of this code section, the school or program shall obtain parental consent prior to conducting screens or evaluations for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Chair recognizes the haberdasher of the Senate, the senator from the 30th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just don't have any skinny ties at the house, so I had to wear a bow tie today. Hey, I bring before you HB 740, and what I found out when we were going through this is, on average, there are 15,000 students in K through third grade that are assigned out-of-school suspension each year. Of those, 2,600 are in that same K through third grade are suspended out of school for 5 or more days. That's averages out to about 2 kids per school across the state. HB 740 is an important step towards schools taking a second look at why some young students are not adjusting to school. Catch them early on while we can still have an influence on their lives. This is important because those same students are at high risk for more disruptive behavior later and are more likely to end up dropping out of school. The second look will utilize the systematic, continuous improvement framework, such as the response to intervention groups that are present already in schools. During this process, they pause long enough to determine if there's an underlying cause that can be addressed to prevent the continuation of that disruptive behavior. There may be undetected vision problems. The students may have a hearing problem and or a language deficit, which means the students may not understand instructions and or has certain needs that they have to improve their own communication skills. There again, there may not be a discernible reason for the misbehavior, in which case the school has done what it can and continues with whatever consequences deemed appropriate. There are exceptions to this, though I don't see them, but if a kindergartner through third grader brings a weapon to school, they don't have to go through the response to intervention. If they are trying to sell illegal drugs at school, they don't have to go through the response to intervention. If the student's behavior endangers the physical safety of other students or school personnel, they don't have to go through the intervention framework there. But all it's doing is saying, is there a reason that the kid is misbehaving? You just look at them. Can they see? Can they hear? Can they communicate verbally? That's what this does. Now, I understand that the senator from the 3rd and the senator from the 29th have put together an amendment. I talked with the chairman of Education and Youth because I did not sit through every one of these committee meetings. He has an issue with the amendment. I'm not going to speak. I'm hoping at some point I'll stretch this long enough where the senator comes back into the chamber so he can address this, because I'm not going to yield the well until he walks back in. No. But that's the gist of 740. I ask you to support the bill. And again, the chairman for Education and Youth has some concerns with Amendment 1 that I would prefer that he address himself. And now I'm subject to your questions.
No questions, Senator.
Thank you. I yield the well and ask for your favorable consideration.
Hold on. There's a late arriving question. Chair recognizes the senator from the 36th for a question.
Thank you. Senator Yield.
I yield.
I see that our Senator, Chair of Education, has returned to the chamber, but are you familiar, and you may well not be, but with what sort of staffing we have of school counselors, school psychologists, school social workers in our schoolhouses that are there precisely to work in the vein that your bill is suggesting, that is to try to get to the bottom of what's going on with the student rather than just doing a knee-jerk disciplinary?
Senator, I think I understand your question. And one of the questions I asked was, is there going to be an increased cost that we're passing down to schools to hire these people to do the test? And what I got was, no, the schools already have these personnel on hand. These tests are, when I say an eye exam, we're not talking about the thing they put in front of your eyes. These are rudimentary tests to help discern on the most basic level whether there's an issue that we need to address. For example, if it's a speech, do we have a speech pathologist in every school? No, we don't. But if you can determine there's a behavioral problem, at least you've identified where it is, and then can start working to get the child the appropriate care.
Further question.
Oh, yes, sure.
Well, I know that school counselors right now across the state are typically expected to deal with over 470 students, I believe, twice the ratio of counselor to student that is recommended nationally as the national standard. And so this approach that you're suggesting in this bill, in lieu of adequately staffing the schools with these professionals, can be a stopgap measure. Isn't it true to avoid discipline when we need to deal with a root problem that a child is having, such as, you say, a vision,
right,
et cetera? Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes the distinguished Education Committee Chairman, Senator from 37.
Does Senator yield?
I'll yield.
Is it not true that this issue was raised in the Education Committee, and when there was public input that questioned the propriety of not having a protection in there and parental consent, that this was discussed in the lines starting, line 33, starting at the school or program shall comply with all federal laws and requirements regarding obtaining parental consent during any advanced tier within the system of supports to the end of the sentence. The comment was made that federal law already has this protection, and they said, well, it's not in state law. This was inserted in the bill to comply with the objections that were raised, and it's my understanding at that time the individuals raising these questions were representing the interest, I think, of the senator from the 3rd. And we put this in the bill to satisfy those concerns.
Senator, I couldn't hear you. Could you ask that question again? No, I'm just messing with you. Yes, Senator.
I'm sorry, I can't.
No, I appreciate you clarifying that. And again, I appreciate you bringing up the transaction there that happened while the committee meeting was going on, because obviously you knew that I was not there to hear that. So I appreciate your insights and input. No, thank you.
Chair now recognize Senator from the 38th for a question. 38.
Will the senator yield?
I'll yield.
Is it not true, and I don't think you were here when I had a preschool, which was private and not public, that I had a preschool. And to further go on to that, I look at this bill and see that we are talking about expelling, which is, we need to have that ability to do, students who possess a weapon, and unfortunately I had a 4-year-old that had a knife.
Mm-hmm.
Illegal drugs or other dangerous instruments. Is it not true, Senator, that those are things that are going to possibly harm other students in the school? And so we definitely need to make sure that those things are offenses that will support and take care of our children in these settings.
Yes, Senator, I agree with you. Obviously that was why those exceptions were put in there, just because the safety is paramount. Thank you. Thank you. I yield the well and ask for your favorable consideration.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 1st to present his amendment. Third, my apologies. You're always number one in my mind, so my apologies.
Thank you, Mr. President, for that compliment. Senators, I present to you Amendment Number 1. Looking at lines 34 and 35 of the bill, it just provides that you're to receive the parental consent at the advanced tier, and we're talking about a level of tiers of involvement when you're dealing with a problem child. The concern is we get parents involved, is that we should get parents involved as soon as possible. When we're putting a child through this program and running evaluations on them, that should start quickly. We need to involve parents early on. And secondly, we're tying the notice requirements to federal law. Well, federal law, it may require you to secure parental consent today, but that may change tomorrow. And I believe that you should always have parental consent if you're going to be evaluating a child. And furthermore, we're tying this bill to federal law that could change in the future, and we have not tied it to a specific point in time for federal law as it exists today. And so in that regard, it may be an improper delegation of our legislative authority. And that's been an objection that we've had dealing with other legislations, and if we're referring to other laws, we refer to laws as they exist at a certain point in time, and the way the bill is written, it does not do that. The amendment just says that if you're going to evaluate a child under this system, at any point in time, you involve the parents, and you're going to have their consent. We're not tying it to federal law. So, Mr. President, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 29th for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the senator yield?
Yes, sir.
So just to be clear, Amendment 1 will just ensure that before a child is subjected to any screening or evaluation that their parent signs off on it. Is that right?
Right, that their parents know about it so that they can help out with that process, help that child in the home to hopefully solve the problem. We need to involve parents as quickly and as early as possible if there's an issue with the child in school.
Thank you, Senator.
Chair now recognizes Senator from the 26th for a question.
Senator Yield.
Yes, sir.
Senator, I thought that from preschool up that kids are tested, and you usually have a counselor or psychological expert within the school system that when they do these tests, they try to find out whether or not that the kid might have a learning disability or there might be some other problems involved with the kid. The question I have, we have 14-year-olds who have their first kid. And when they get to pre-K, they might be 20 years old and felt like they missed out on life and not taking care of the kids, so grandparents are involved. So what I'm trying to find out, do we include in the process the testing so that we would know whether or not that kid's on track, whether or not that kid might have a mental disability that might end up turning into something else while that kid's in school, and then all of a sudden you start having the behavioral problems?
Well, I'm sure that can be a part of it, but my point has been we need to involve the parent as soon as possible if there are any issues with that child, no matter what they are. And if we're going to be evaluating a child because that child is creating a discipline problem in the school, you know, he's not learning, other children are not learning, we need to do all that we can to address it. And part of that, probably one of the most important aspects of it, is going to be involving the parents. So I would, in your situation, I think parents should be involved as well.
Chair recognizes Senator from 37th for a question. 40th for a question.
Senator Yield?
Yes, sir.
Senator, I could be wrong, but in reading this section, which is the total section of Section B, is it not true that we're talking about getting parental consent? This only deals, which I think they're doing anyway, but this deals if before a child gets expelled or suspended.
Correct.
So what we're saying here in this section is before somebody can be expelled or suspended,
right,
you have to have parental consent before you do any evaluation. Is that not true?
That's what we're saying, that we want
So
to have parental consent.
Well, I understand, but I'm trying to understand your amendment in that same code section. I don't know what it does any difference because we're dealing only if the child is going to be expelled or suspended.
Right.
Versus just any other situation where they would counsel with the parent.
Well,
is that not true?
My amendment is not tied to federal law. I mean, that's the first big difference, because federal law, one, can change. There may be a requirement to obtain parental consent today, but tomorrow there may not be a requirement to obtain parental consent. Number two, which federal law are we tying it to? I mean, there's no law that we've identified as to time that we've tied it to, so the standard for when consent may or may not be given is going to be subject to change going forward. And in that regard, we've delegated a legislative authority to establish that requirement to federal law. And
would you further yield?
Yes.
Is it not true, though, the purpose of this bill is that we are not trying to have children thrown out of school, okay, unless a parent is made aware before we try to work with this child to make sure we're taking the proper course of action. And that's what this whole code section deals with, right? Section lines 27 through 35. I mean,
Right,
we're talking about two particular instances to be suspended or expelled. If you want to have parental consent for everything, I don't think what you're trying to do belongs in this particular code section. Is that not true?
It doesn't deal with everything. If you look at my amendment, it says the school or program shall obtain parental consent prior to conducting screens or evaluations. Look at the sentence that I'm amending. The only thing that I'm taking out are the requirement that it be an advanced tier and that it be tied to federal law.
One further question, would you use?
So it is in the code section dealing with different tiers. If you look at the definition on page 1, lines 16 through 19, it talks about a multi-tiered system.
Would you further yield for one last question? I guess the bottom line is, isn't it true, though, this is only in the event of they're going to expel or suspend a child,
right?
This area. If
That's
there's
right.
other things that involve with parent conferences,
Right.
other things about,
This
we're
is
just
dealing
talking
with
about this one narrow
this
area.
one narrow area.
Okay.
In this narrow area, we want the parental consent. That's right.
Chair recognizes Senator from 23rd for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the senator yield?
Yes, sir.
Just for clarification purposes, would parental consent include the consent of a foster parent or someone with a parental power of attorney, a guardian, or someone with custody, such as a grandparent?
It should. Who has the custodial, I guess the guardian of that child, it should.
So shouldn't your amendment be clarified to indicate that?
It could, and then, of course, then the underlying bill should have been clarified as well. It was patterned off the underlying bill.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Senator from 37th for a question.
Senator Yield,
Yes, sir.
under the multi-tiered discipline system, would you agree that expulsion or suspension from school is an advanced degree?
It's an advanced degree, yes.
This bill provides for parental consent of that. Would
Right.
you further yield?
Yes, sir.
Would you agree that a teacher ought to obtain parental consent for putting a child in timeout in class?
Well, the parent should be notified. I mean, you probably need to put the child in timeout right away. That's not what the amendment does. That's not what the underlying bill does. The amendment, it says that you obtain parental consent for certain screenings or evaluations. That is, you're going to put the child through a series of evaluations or tests that are dealing with that behavior, well, then the parent should be notified of that. They should be involved as early as possible.
I believe the bill provides for that.
Right.
No further question.
Thank you, Mr. President.
We have Amendment 1A that has just been dropped, and would like to put it up on the screen if we might, because I don't think we're going to be able to get it printed in time, right? So if Secretary will read 1A, Amendment 1A.
Amendment 1A by Senator McCune of the 29th. Amendment 1 to House Bill 740 by inserting following the words consent on line 5 or consent of a legal guardian.
Pretty self-explanatory. Do you wish to, all right? This is just consent, either or. We're good. The question is on Amendment 1A. Is there objection to 1A? Yeah, you don't want to object to 1A. All right, 1A, there's no objection to 1A. So 1A is adopted. Now the question is Amendment 1 as amended. Is there objection? There is objection by the chairman of the Education Committee. All those in favor of Amendment 1 as amended, rise, stand, and be counted. If you are in favor of it, rise, stand, and be counted. Reverse. On Amendment 1 is amended. The yeas are 5 and the nays are 35, and the amendment has lost. Now the question is on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection? Without objection, committee substitute is adopted. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is there objection? Agreed. The Report of Committee which fair will pass the bill. Chairs none. Report of Committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? Any objections? Chairs none. Main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass? Question on the pass of the bill. All those in favor of the bill, vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 47 and the nays are 5, and this bill, MC Rex constitutional majority, is therefore adopted. Secretary now will read House Bill 779.
House Bill 779 by President Powell III and others, a bill will be titled an act to amend Chapter 3 of Title 30 of the OCGA relating to emergency management so as to establish the Homeland Security Division of the Georgia Emergency Management and Homeland Security Agency to amend Code Section 1611-130 of the OCGA relating to exemptions from Code Section 1611-126 through 1611-127.2 so as to authorize any officer or agent or retired officer or agent of such division to carry a handgun on or off duty within this state with an exception and for other purposes. Mr. President, Senate Committee on Public Safety offers the following substitutes. House Bill 779, a bill entitled an act to amend Chapter 3 of Title 30 of the OCGA relating to emergency management so as to revise the duties of the Director of the Georgia Emergency Management and Homeland Security Agency to provide definitions to create the Board of Homeland Security and for other purposes. Amendment 1 by Senator Harper VII and others offers the following amendment. Amend the Senate Committee on Public Safety substitute to House Bill 779 by replacing lines 118 and 119 with the following. Emergency Operations Command, where such Emergency Operations Command shall not usurp the operational authority of participating agencies but shall be responsible only for coordinating the public. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 46th to present the bill. Distinguished Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a continuation of last year's bill working on our anti-terrorism activities for the state. This is an administration bill. You may recall there was somewhat of a turf war last year over who was going to have control of GSAC. We call that the Fusion Center. It's the Georgia Information Security and Analysis Center, our collaborative efforts with the FBI and the Federal Homeland Security Agency. That had been established by an executive order. We codified it a couple of years ago, and last year there was a dispute as to who would have control of that center. Would it be the GBI? Would it be GIMSA, which is Georgia Emergency Management and Homeland Security? Or we had attempted to create a new agency, a Homeland Security Director, to be in charge of that. It didn't pass in its entirety last year in the off season. The agencies came to an agreement, and this bill clarifies that GSAC, the Fusion Center, will be a division within the GBI. The GBI will run that, and GIMSA, GEMA, will now have some analysts that are dedicated to Homeland Security, anti-terrorism type activities that will be attached to the GBI to take care of their role within GSAC. A couple of other parts of the bill is that it makes it clear that Georgia Emergency Management will be the state security manager, and that will be the agency that gives security clearances within the state of Georgia. And it also clarifies that our Emergency Operations Command that is set up to respond to not only natural disasters but also to terrorist type activities will be housed within GIMSA. And the final thing here, which I'm encouraged by, is it establishes a Board of Homeland Security. This will be a 17-person body that's charged with giving advice to the governor on how we should implement an anti-terror strategy, as well as developing that anti-terror strategy. This board will be a 17-person board. It will be chaired by the governor. We'll also have the head of GIMSA, the head of the GBI, head of public safety, the Attorney General, the head of the Department of Natural Resources, the Commissioner of Public Health, the state school superintendent, since we are seeing these activities now reach out into the schools, the head of the DOT. We make sure we keep our transportation system protected, the Agriculture Commissioner, and the Director of the Georgia Technology Authority. This board, and there will be 5 members appointed by the governor, that will include a sheriff, a head of a local law enforcement agency, a member of the House, and a member of the Senate, and another appointee. That board will develop this strategy to keep our state protected from any of these type of terrorist activities. I would strongly encourage your favorable vote on this bill as we kind of complete here our state strategy for responding to terrorist activities. Mr. President, if there are no questions, I'll yield to Well. I do see there is an amendment. It is a friendly amendment. It's just a clerical clarification as far as I understand on that Emergency Operations Command, that they don't infringe upon authority of other agencies.
All right, you have a couple questions. Chair recognizes Senator from the 53rd.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Yield.
I sure yield to the rules, Chairman.
Well, look at him. Let me ask you something. What if the GBI messes with GIMS's GSAC? Who would be involved in that?
We're going to have a lot of bodies involved in that. They do call it a fusion center, so we'll have them all working together.
Well, let me follow up with that. What about, look at here, what if the locals had difficulty with the state? Who would decide or mitigate the problem between those two?
This sets up that chain of command. The GBI will be responsible.
Well, and thank you for your leadership in this and help keeping us safe, Senator.
Thank you. I appreciate those friendly questions.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 7th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the Majority Leader yield?
I yield.
I appreciate your good work on the underlying bill, and I know that you and I and the Senator from the 56 and others have worked on Homeland Security issues in this chamber for many over the last couple of years. And is it not true that the Amendment 1 that you spoke to is just a clarification to make sure that the issues in regards to the Emergency Operations Command, make sure that we clarify what their role and responsibilities are in that particular regard?
That does, and I view that as a friendly amendment. I encourage its passage. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the will.
Questions on amendment number 1, authored by the senator from the 7th. Is there objection? Without objection, amendment number 1 is adopted. Question now is on the adoption of the committee substitute as amended. Is there objection? Without objection, committee substitute as amended is adopted. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is there objection? Agree in the Porter Committee which fail to pass the bill. Chair is none. Porter Committee is agreed to. Should the main question be now put? Any objection? Chair is none. Main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass? Question on the pass the bill. All those in favor of the bill vote aye. Those opposed no. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the pass the bill, the yeas are 50, the nays are 0, and this bill, IMC Rex constitutional majority, is therefore adopted. Secretary now will read House Bill 780.
House Bill 780 by Representative Williamson, the 115th, a bill we titled Enactment, Chapter 1 of Title 7 of the OCGA relating to financial institutions so as to provide for numerous changes to provisions applicable to the Department of Banking and Finance and financial institutions generally, banks and trust companies, credit unions, licensed sellers of payment instruments, those licensed to cash payments instruments, and mortgage lenders and mortgage brokers, and for other purposes. Mr. President, Senate Committee on Banking and Financial Institutions offers the following subject to House Bill 780, a bill we titled Enactment, Chapter 1 of Title 7 of the OCGA relating to financial institutions so as to provide for numerous changes and provisions applicable to the Department of Banking and Finance and financial institutions generally, banks and trust companies, credit unions, licensed sellers of payment instruments, those licensed to cash payment instruments, and mortgage lenders and mortgage brokers, and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 18th to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good afternoon, colleagues. As you know, every year the banking chair and banking department and banking commissioner ask us to update the banking code. And so I bring that bill to you for your consideration in the form of SB 780, or HB 780. It is this year's annual housekeeping bill. It contains proposed legislative changes identified internally by the department or suggested by the industry over the course of the previous year since we last updated this code section. The major goal of these efforts is streamlining or simplifying of the existing statutes to make the department's regulations more efficient and to ease the regulatory burden on financial institutions while at the same time ensuring that banks and credit unions are safe and sound. The focus of this housekeeping bill is to help make Georgia more competitive. The legislation is supported by the Georgia Bankers Association, the Community Bankers Association, Georgia Credit Union Affiliates, and Mortgage Bankers Association of Georgia. Most of the proposed revisions for banks and credit unions are relatively straightforward as they either align certain standards regarding governance of these financial institutions with corporate or nonprofit corporation code that we already have, or to seek to align some of the currently existing standards between banks and credit unions. This bill proposes some much-needed cleanup that we need for the banking laws in Georgia, and I would ask for your favorable support.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 26th for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Hill.
Yes, sir, to my good colleague from Macon.
Yeah. We used to be.
Oh, we still are. You still love me, Senator.
Yeah. With a long handled spoon.
Wait a minute, that's not me.
Senator.
Yes, sir.
What are we doing in this particular bill that's not already in the code section?
Well, it's everything that's changed in the bill, Senator. Do you have a question about a particular section? I'll be
Well, you
glad to-
know,
What's that?
isn't it true that we're at the latter part of the session, and that is when bills become very dangerous? And I'm asking again, what are we doing with this bill that's dealing with banking that's not in the code section now?
Well, it does several things, Senator. Number one, in the current law, the banking commissioner, the Commissioner of Banking and Finance may, by specific order, grant any power already conferred to a bank under federal supervision to a state chartered bank or credit union or subsidiary. The bank also creates some new code sections, Senator, where a state bank or a credit union may exercise any federal power or claim federal preclusion or preemption in effect on January of 2018. Another example is current law allows the commissioner to suspend individuals from employment with any financial institution in response to various kinds of unethical or improper behavior. This bill changes it to allow the commissioner to bar such person from any financial institution's affiliate. Current law requires also what we passed last year, Senator, that each director of a bank, trust company, or credit union to take an oath before assuming their office. This bill states that that oath will not modify their legal duties or a standard of care owed to others while exercising their duties, something I would think the distinguished senator from the 26th would certainly agree. Another example is that currently if a bank holding company has a bank subsidiary with banking offices in the state, they will qualify to do business in the state as a foreign corporation. However, they must notify the Department of Banking and Finance of the location of their initial registered office and their initial registered agent. This bill moves that requirement. Bill also gives credit unions a new power to purchase, hold, and fund life insurance for their directors, officers, and employees, and any other person whose death may cause the credit union financial loss. So there's many examples. Those are just some of the cleanup. I don't think any of...
I think that'd be enough.
Yes, sir. Thank
Senator, you have any more legitimate questions?
My question is legitimate, Mr. President.
Well, I'm just saying, I mean, let's...
Let me ask this. Does this bill do anything with usury? I noticed, and I was reading the paper where some bank in Georgia is in trouble in a lawsuit, and I'm wondering whether or not this bill does anything to help them in a lawsuit.
This bill specifically, well, what you may be thinking of, Senator, is some pending litigation against a particularly large bank. This bill specifically exempts any misinterpretation that this bill would affect the presently pending litigation against that bank. So it specifically carves that out. So happy to tell you, no, sir, it does not.
No further questions, Senator. Questions on the adoption of the committee substitute is the objection. Without objection, committee substitute is adopted. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is the objection to agree in the report of committee which fail pass the bill? Chairs none. Report of committee is agreed to. All those in favor of the bill vote aye. Those opposed no. Secretary unlock the bill. will. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 51, the nays are 0. This bill, AMC Rex Constitutional Majority, is therefore adopted. Secretary will read House Bill 843.
House Bill 843 by Resident Shaw, the 176th and others, bill we titled enactment in Code Section 48740.1 of the OCGA relating to tax credits for business enterprises in less developed areas, so as to including census tract that in a county that contains a certain federal military institution and also contains an industrial park and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 20th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Title 48, Chapter 7-40-1 deals with tax credits for business enterprise zones in less developed areas and other circumstances. There are 4 criteria currently to qualify to be one of these zones. An area where they've had a closing of a plant or plants or large business. Number 2 is a military, an area where there's a federal military installation with a 15% poverty rate or greater. Number 3 is result of an airport expansion. And number 4 is an area that has pervasive poverty, underdevelopment, general distress, and blight. House Bill 843 expands the second category for areas with federal military installations to add 2.1, which is any census tract in a county that contains a federal military installation with a garrison of at least 5,000 federal or military personnel combined, and also contains an industrial park that is owned and operated by a governmental entity. This is a good bill for economic development around our military installations, which will further protect them from future BRAC, insulate them from that. It's also a good rural economic development bill, and I ask for your favorable consideration. I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any. If none, I will yield the well.
No further questions, Senator.
Thank you.
Any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is the objection read in the report of committee which fail to pass the bill? Chairs none. Report of committee is agreed to. All those in favor of the bill, vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 51, the nays are 0. This bill, AMC Rex Constitutional Majority, is therefore adopted. Secretary now will read House Bill 878.
House Bill 878 by Representative Clark of the 147th and others, a bill be titled enactment in Code Section 332444.1 of the OCGA relating to procedure for cancellation by an insured in notice so as to change certain provisions regarding cancellation of an insurance policy by an insured for other purposes. Mr. President, Senate Commit, Senator Harbin, the 16th, and others offers the following amendment. Amendment 1 to amend House Bill 878 by adding on lines 12, after canceled, the following. In the event of oral cancellation, the insurer shall within 10 days provide such insured electronically or in writing confirmation of such requested cancellation. That concludes the order.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 16th. Present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President and colleagues. I bring before you HB 878. This is cancellation by insured. In order for an insured to cancel a policy, current law requires the insured to return the original policy to the insurer or make a written request to the agent or insurer. Customers can purchase insurance by phone. They believe that they should also be able to cancel by phone. HB 878 will change the current law and allow an insured to cancel the policy either orally, electronically, or in writing. Under Georgia's law, if a customer does not follow up with a written request to cancel, the insurer is obligated to keep the policy in force and bill the customer for the coverage. When the customer does not pay for the bill because they believe they have canceled their insurance, the insurer then sends a cancellation notice to the customer. A customer may be upset by receiving a cancellation notice having been canceled, might have been averted if he had been able to cancel orally. Customers may currently cancel their policy by email and text messages, which is under Georgia's Uniform Electronic Transaction Act, and the insurers have procedures to confirm the authority of the individual canceling the policy, and usually this is done by referencing policy numbers, social security numbers, or dates of birth. Current concerns regarding the unauthorized cancellations are no greater with the cancellation by phone than they would be currently by cancellation by email or text messages. Also, the insurers generally have a process to address divorce and spouses. I'll mention this, if their policy is in two different names, it requires both people to cancel it. Even by verbal, you would need both individuals to do such. The insurers have a method for determining their identity. We talked about that. There are currently 47 states that allow for oral cancellation. This has had the Property Casualty Trade Associations of the Big I, the PIA, Geico, and State Farm. The insurance department has reviewed it and has no concerns over it. And that's the bill, sir.
Chair recognizes Senator 26 for a question. To your right.
To your right.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Yield.
Yes, sir.
Why do we need this bill?
Currently, the law does not allow you to pick up the phone and cancel your policy. You have to do it in written format. And what people are doing or people are wanting is the ability to cancel. The amendment would also require the company, if you called up to cancel your insurance, they would ask you your policy number, pertinent social security number, date of birth to assure you're who you say you are. And then they would be required to send you a notice of that cancellation. Right now, the law would either require an email, a text, or a written signature in order to cancel a policy. I would mention in the securities business right now, a lot of transactions are conducted over the phone and they're recorded by phone, so there's a recording of the voice of the requests that are done, and this is just allowing that under Georgia law. You would be able to do it with an oral command.
Would Senator further yield?
Yes, sir.
Senator, what happens if you got family coverage and on an automobile policy, and by law you have to list all your drivers in the household, and say you end up with a family, a wife and a husband go through a bad divorce, policy in husband's name, husband called, cancel the policy, wife doesn't know anything about it, and then she ends up in a car wreck or this, what happens then?
Okay. Under current law, if the policy is in his name, he is the insured, and he has the authority of the policy. Procedurally, I believe in most of the policies that I do personally, we put both the husband and wife as the insured, therefore it requires both. But he could still do that, whether orally or written or email or text, he could do that because the policy is in his name. It would need to be in both names to prevent the problem you're talking about.
Senator Yield. Senator, things change. We are changing the law. Right now, as an agent, when you cancel your policy with me, I take it down the time you call, and I tell you need to come in the office and sign an affidavit. That's to protect me and my errors and omissions. With this, the general, a Geico, you call and you get an insurance policy then. If you got your debit card or your credit card, you pay your premium right then. What I'm asking you, that policy is in my name and my wife is included on that policy. If we have a bad divorce, it's a vindictive divorce. I cancel the policy. They don't know whether I got a divorce or not. I cancel the policy and get me another policy. And if my spouse goes out and have a wreck and doesn't even know she doesn't have insurance unless she is stopped, and they check the insurance and they tell her, you are driving with no insurance. So I'm asking you, if you do that, do you notify the other spouse, even though there's only one policy in one's name, but when you pull the file, you look at all the listed drivers. What happens then if you cancel that policy and the spouse does not know anything about it, even though you're going through that divorce, and she has an accident, what happens?
Same thing will happen today if we were in, let's do it in paper. If the policy is in his name, he therefore has the authority to cancel the policy. Whether he could do that in a written format, in an email, a text, this would allow him to do it orally. He would get a notification of cancellation from the carrier because he is the named insured of the policy and controls it. There would be no notification to the wife because she is not a insured. And that's where I would change, and personally, everybody should have both people named in the policy to have it done correctly. Not everybody does that.
I do it right now, Senator, and I've notified the spouse.
Right.
If you are canceling the policy because I want them to be covered.
Absolutely.
What you're doing here is over the telephone. Are you texting it? And the question I have,
right,
if you do it that way, when you pull the policy number will list the drivers on the policy.
Correct.
If you're going to do it that way, then don't you think, isn't it true, that the spouse should be notified at the same time? Because if there is no insurance, she can get her own insurance. And I'm not saying that happens all the time, but there are occasions when you have those divisive divorces,
yep,
and one's trying to outsmart the other one, and you end up with that particular person out on the limb, not even knowing until something happens.
Right. The current law, it would still be the same way. He could cancel the policy in written format or email or text. There would be a cancellation notice sent to the address of the insured, but it would not go to the spouse under the current law as it stands.
Well, if that's under the current law, why do we need this law then?
This allows for the oral cancellation of it so that he could pick up the phone and call, give his policy number, social security number, date of birth to identify who he is, and he could cancel that policy, and notice would be sent. If it was in the name of joint of two people, both people would have to have voice orders to do that if it was in both the husband and the wife's name.
Senator, further you. Senator, isn't it true? There are no joint policies. The wife or the spouse, whoever takes out the policy, the spouse is listed on the policy because you got to have their ID. Then you can check the driving record and determine whether or not there are going to be points assessed against the policy for speeding tickets or previous accidents. So, you know, isn't it true? That ain't exactly the truth.
The senator knows from which he speaks.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 14th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Yield?
Yes, sir.
Senator, is it not true that currently, the way it exists, that there's a policyholder of the insurance policy? If there's a single policyholder that owns that policy, they're the only ones that can make changes to the policy?
That's correct.
Senator, further yield?
Yes, sir.
Is it not true that if there is joint, husband and wife, that are the policyholders, they both have to be notified under current law if there's going to be a change or cancellation?
That's correct.
Senator, further yield?
Yes, sir.
Is it not true this legislation doesn't seek to change current law and how that is handled? It simply allows and aligns this state with other states to allow a cancellation to be done verbally?
Correct, sir.
Senator, further yield.
Yes, sir.
Does it also, through this amendment, allow that once a verbal notification for cancellation is executed, that the insurance agent will then respond back either in writing, by text, or email to confirm that that verbal request was made?
You are correct, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 9th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Yield.
Yes, sir.
Is it not true that we're not preventing any insurance agents from requiring written notification?
That is correct.
Is it also not true that my understanding, typically in a divorce case, there often are orders given by the judge that would prevent a spouse from taking vindictive actions such as canceling insurance on the other spouses?
That is correct.
And you further yield?
Yes, sir.
If they were to do that, wouldn't they be in contempt of court?
They would be.
Okay. And then finally, is it also not true that there already are provisions on the books of notification of cancellation of any policy, whether it's by insurance request or non-payment of premium or for underwriting reasons, but out of an abundance of caution, we're adding extra notice in this amendment that you've offered?
Correct. Correct.
Thanks.
Okay.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 40th for a quick question.
Very briefly, thank you. Senator Yield?
Yes, sir.
Senator, is it true the gentleman on the 14th probably covered everything except just one correction? It's not the agent, it's the insurance company that is going to have to do this within 10 days versus your amendment. And that way, you're trying to alleviate the concerns of the gentleman from Macon by at least having the insurance company send a written notice within 10 days after there's been an oral cancellation. Is that true?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 38th for a question.
Will the senator yield?
Yes, ma'am.
Simple question. If you get written notification after the phone call to cancel it, and you say that you did not make that call, does that reinstate the policy?
If you identify yourself with the phone call as the individual and you document your file as the agent, and you get notice of the cancellation and you call and want to reinstate it.
No, I didn't say reinstate it. I'm
Okay.
saying that we said that, well, yes, reinstated. That was wrong. It should
Okay.
not have been canceled. Will it be reinstated?
If it is the company, and this would be two things. The agent would have to ask the company for permission to reinstate if it had been request had been made to cancel. And the company has the option at that point in time to reinstate or to require a new application at that time. It would probably depend upon the time elapsed between the request for cancellation and the request to reinstate. And if it's a few days, most of them will reinstate without problem. I have seen if it's an extended period of time, they will require a new application to be presented.
But the senator for the yield.
Yes,
to
ma'am.
clarify this a little bit more.
Okay.
We made a phone call.
Okay.
I made a phone call. My husband made a phone call, whatever. And he said to cancel it. And then he comes back, to make it very simple, and says, I didn't make that phone call. Okay? It's going to take time to get that information to him that it has been canceled. And you said a couple of days, but he didn't make the phone call, or I didn't make the phone call, which one of us did it. What's the situation in that particular? My concern is what happens at that particular time.
You're saying that the person did not make the phone call.
That is correct.
That is correct. But got a notice that it was canceled, and then is requesting it to be reinstated, correct?
He said it wasn't done, so yes,
Okay.
I'm not trying to be funny.
And that's why this amendment was here, is that we would like, if they get a request, that there would be either a text or an email to the insured, if at all possible. If that could not be done, there would be at least a written notice that's going to go out. Now, then I would say if he did not do it, the policy would not be canceled, and you would request reinstatement if he said he did not make that request. Just like if you got a fraudulent request to cancel, we're going to require either signatures or an email or a text under current. This would simply require, allow for the oral, but you are going to try to verify either through policy number, social security number, date of birth, who the person is.
I'm going to ask one more question. Is it not true that it would be safer for the insurer to have written notice that they want to cancel versus doing oral notice? Because that can come from anybody saying that they did. I know you have to have, probably social security number and have other things, but is it not true, policy numbers, et cetera? But I mean, somebody comes and cleans my house. They get upset with me. They see my insurance information. They make a phone call, and they cancel orally cancel my policy. I'm having pause with this. I'm so sorry. I'm just the oral part. Are you asking them to record the phone call? Maybe I should go that way.
Okay. It could be done. Let me give you this. Many of the carriers who are direct writers, and that means they do not have an agent involved, like the idea of a oral cancellation. It reduces the paperwork. Most of the people that I have talked to that are in my business, we require an email or signatures to be done, but in 47 states it's being done currently where they are doing it. Recording is probably the normal thing that large companies do, just like the securities industry does. They're going to record the phone conversation, and I say that probably the way people want things to happen quickly, and that's the way it gets done.
Thank you, Senator.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
The senator has yielded. He has yielded well. Surely everyone has made their mind up on this issue, but for some reason, the senator from Bibb County is still anxiously wanting to express his view from the well. He said he's going to be real quick.
Ladies and gentlemen, the question I have is this, and it happens sometimes. If you are writing policies on the phone, if you have a nasty divorce and you got a family involved, to me it makes sense that if you're going to do it, then notify the other. If you call in to cancel, you got to give the policy number, so that basically lets you know, and they'll ask you for your date of birth when you do the policy. But on the policy, the drivers are listed. That's whether you have teenage kids or your spouse or anything. What happens in a nasty divorce? What happens? One gets mad. If the policy is in their name, they'll cancel and go get another policy. The other one, and this is prior to the full paperwork and everything going through for the divorce, the other one doesn't even know that they do not even have insurance. And what I'm suggesting is, the way I've always done it is I make them come in and sign an affidavit, and then I locate the other spouse because I got the phone numbers on the policy so I can get all the information. What I'm suggesting is what you do, if you're going to do it or you're going to call in and do it, that the information ought to be with those insurance companies to notify the other spouse that the policy is being canceled. Now you can notify them by texting, get the phone numbers, text it to them, get the cell phone number, text it to them, because what you're going to end up with a problem. That person goes out, have a major accident, and not knowing that they're not covered. Not knowing that they're not covered. And that is what's going to happen. Now you say, well, you can do this anyway. Well, if you can do it anyway, then why have the bill? You can't do it. You're making it easier for folks, but what I'm saying to you, let's just make sure the other folks are covered, because we, by law, require you to have liability coverage. We by law through the state require you to have liability coverage. And the only thing I'm saying, if that is the case, then notify the other spouse by text or what have you that you no longer have insurance. And to me, that takes care of that matter. But I'm just talking about that gray area where you're going to have it to happen.
Thank you, Senator. Questions on amendment number 1, authored by the senator from the 16th. Is there objection? Without objection, amendment number 1 is adopted. Now, does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is the objection read in the Report of Committee which fair will pass the bill? Chairs none. Report of Committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? Any objection? Chairs none. Main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass? Question on the pass the bill is amended. All those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 43 and the nays are 11, and this bill actually records constitutional majority is therefore adopted. Secretary will read House Bill 886.
House Bill 886 by Reverend Watson, the 172nd, and others. The bill will be titled an Act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 8 of Title 48 of the GA relating to state sales and use taxes, so as to provide for the cooperation of the Department of Revenue and the Department of Agriculture in the administration and enforcement of the state sales and use tax exemption for agricultural machinery and equipment, to provide for a change to the qualifying amounts for the agricultural exemption, and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Call upon the senator from the 50th to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the Senate, I bring before you today HB 886, better known as the Georgia Agricultural Tax Exemption Update Bill. This bill is an attempt to improve the integrity of the GATE program and to make it better. The changes in the bill allows the Department of Revenue and the Department of Agriculture to communicate if the DOR has information, or if the Department of Agriculture needs to get information from the Department of Revenue, they will be able to do that. That's been a challenge in the past. It increases the threshold to qualify for the GATE exemption from $2,500 a year to $5,000. It goes to a 3-year card. Currently, you have to renew your card annually at a price of $25. If this bill passes, the cost will be $150 for a 3-year renewal. Mr. President, if there are no questions, I'll yield the well.
There are no questions, Senator. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Are there any objections to agreeing to the report of the committee? Senator from the 53rd.
Parliamentary inquiry.
Parliamentary, state your inquiry.
Looky here. I want to talk about timing and notice, and I think you're violating Senate Rule 6.77. Could you confer and
Mr.
give me
Secretary, will you look up Senate Rule 6.77?
This is serious.
There is no such rule. Thank you, Senator from the 53rd, for pointing that out. But there should be one. Senator from the 31st, you recognize to come to the well.
Ladies and gentlemen, I just wanted to ask your indulgence for a moment. The Georgia agricultural tax exemption is a provision that allows Georgia's ag producers to enjoy the same or similar benefits to other manufacturers in the state of Georgia. If I had a business and I was manufacturing yo-yos, there would be no limit on the amount of yo-yos I had to sell in order to qualify for a tax exemption on the goods that I purchased to build those yo-yos out of. And also, I wouldn't have to pay to enjoy that benefit. But for some reason, we have chosen to treat Georgia's farmers differently from that. We punish the whole class of people for the wrongs of just a few. If you'll notice in this bill, current law required an ag producer to produce $2,500 worth of product annually. It doubles that. Now this yo-yo producer, for example, if this applied to a yo-yo producer, would have to produce $5,000 worth of product. Now agriculture, like many other businesses, is not exclusive to large producers. There are a lot of small guys in the state that produce a bona fide agricultural product. This legislation seeks to make it more difficult for those people. And then the $25 per year charge that the yo-yo producer wouldn't have to pay is now doubled to $50 per year, plus he's got to pay 3 years in advance to enjoy that benefit that others would enjoy. So while I support some of the measures in the bill, where there are folks that are taking advantage of the program, I think that we ought to go after them, and we ought to have a system in place to try to identify those people. There is still time to do that in other legislation. So I would ask for you to vote against this bill and look out for the smaller ag producers in our state. If there are no questions, I'll yield away.
There are no questions, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Does any other senator wish to speak? I beg your pardon, you do have a question from Senator from the 3rd.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the senator yield?
I do. I've never been accused of being too fast. I just didn't get out of the well in time.
So if you vote against it, that means that current law just stays in place and that
That's right.
lower exemption applies to agricultural producers?
That's true.
Okay, thank
you. You know, the other point that I didn't make was we put some money in the budget last year for the Department of Agriculture to carry out some education programs and help resolve this issue. Thank you. I'd ask for your no vote on this bill.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall the main question now be put? Are there any other questions? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. Now shall the bill pass? The question is on the passage of the bill. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. Mr. Secretary, if you'll unlock the machines. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 47, the nays are 6. And this bill obviously has received the requisite constitutional majority is therefore passed. Mr. Secretary, read House Bill 898.
House Bill 898 by President Powell, 32nd and others, a bill will be titled enactment in Chapter 2 of Title 40 of the OCGA relating to registration and licensing of motor vehicles so as to revise provisions relative to fleet vehicles and fleet vehicle registration plans and for other purposes. Mr. President, Senate Committee on Public Safety offers the following substitute to House Bill 898, a bill will be titled enactment in Chapter 2 of Title 40 of the OCGA relating to registration and licensing of motor vehicles so as to revise provisions relative to fleet vehicles and fleet vehicle registration plans, provide for definitions, to provide for fleet enrollment procedures, and for other purposes. Amendment 1 by Senator Kirk of the 13th authors the following amendment. Amend the committee sub to House Bill 898 by adding on line 8 after program the following. Provide for conditions related to wearing headphones or headsets to prohibit wearing a device which impairs a person's vision by changing Section 3, line 190 to read, Chapter 6 of Title 40 of the OCGA relating to uniform rules of the road is amended by revision code section 46250 relating to wearing a device which impairs hearing or vision and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Call upon the Senator from the 7th to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, the Senate House Bill 898 is a piece of legislation we've been working on with the Department of Revenue. As you may recall, last year we passed legislation that required the department to do a study to figure out a way to best handle fleet registrations. This is a result of that conversation with DOR and with industry. It's a bill that is supported by some of our industry partners here in our state, with UPS, Enterprise, Georgia Power, AT&T, NFIB supports the legislation before you. It reduces the number of vehicles you have to be considered fleet. It does some other things to streamline the process with the Department of Revenue to be able to have a fleet vehicle tag. It also has language in here in regards to adding volunteer firefighters that was added in our committee in public safety to be able to obtain a firefighter tag, and also provisions for when they have to be returned. Mr. President, if there are no questions, I will yield the well.
You have a question for the Senator from the 38th.
Okay.
Will the senator yield?
I will yield. Yes, ma'am.
Can I have you go through that list again of the places that it would help? I know you started with Enterprise, and I got Georgia Power.
Oh, the companies or corporations. UPS, Enterprise, Georgia Power, Atlanta Gas and Light, AT&T, NFIB supports the legislation, and among others. But that's a short list of companies and corporations in our state that are supporting the underlying bill.
Thank you so much for that. You ran through it so fast, and I didn't
I'm
want to
sorry.
know who it was.
I'm just trying to make sure that we speed the process along. There isn't an amendment. I'm going to let the senator speak to his amendment, but I have no issues with the amendment, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. There are no further questions. Senator from the 13th, you wish to speak to your amendment? Where is he?
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, what this amendment does, this is a friendly amendment, and by the way, this bill was authored by Representative Alan Powell over in the House, and he also is a second signer on this bill that didn't quite make it through crossover. All this bill does is allow people who ride motorcycles, they have Bluetooth headsets now where you can communicate with your passenger. You actually can take a phone call and so forth. With that, of course, it's hands-free, driving a motorcycle. But this just allows, because in our code right now, it does not allow for those devices, but this allows for those devices. So I would ask your favorable consideration for this amendment. If there are no questions, I'll yield the well.
A couple of questions, Senator.
All right.
Senator from 38th, you recognize?
Well, the senator yield.
Certainly.
And I probably should have asked this to the sponsor in the Senate. Is there, it looks to me like there's going to be a loss of money to the state by changing this. Is there is there something to let us know how much money will not be coming into the state budget as a result of this bill? And I understand, but I need to ask the question.
Right, Senator, I appreciate that. I can only speak to the amendment. I would have to defer to the senator from the 7th. Okay, any other questions?
One more question, Senator from the 7th.
Yes.
To the senator in the well, will you yield?
Certainly.
Isn't it true in the underlying bill that there is a reduction of the fee to register a fleet? However, individuals who get the fleet tag still have to pay the state and local taxes for those vehicles. Is that not true?
I think that is true, Senator, and I think it also will increase the number of fleets because we've reduced the number that it requires down to 100.
That is correct.
Thank you.
No further questions, Senator.
Thank you.
State your inquiry.
Parliamentary inquiry, Mr. President.
State your inquiry.
I would request a germaneness ruling on this amendment. It seems that the underlying bill relates to fleets of vehicles, and the amendment relates to headphones and headsets.
Are those in fleets of vehicles?
I don't think it's related to fleets and vehicles.
That'll be my determination, Senator. After considerable consideration, thank you for your objection, but we ruled it's germane. It is. It is. Thank you, Senator. On the adoption of the amendment, is there objection to the adoption of the amendment? Hearing none, the floor amendment is, where is it? Beg your pardon, I didn't hear you. Are there 5 objections? 2. I got 2 objections. All those in favor of the amendment, rise, stand, and be counted. All those in favor of the amendment, rise, stand, and be counted. All those in favor, rise, stand, and be counted. Reverse. Rise, stand, and be counted. Reverse. That was a quick count. "35 yeas, 4 nays. The amendment is adopted. The questions on the committee substitute as amended. Is there objection to the committee adoption of the committee substitute as amended? Hearing none, the committee substitute is adopted as amended. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall the main question now be put? Are there any objections? The chair hears none. The main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass by substitute? The questions on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. Mr. Secretary, if you'll unlock the machines. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 51, the nays are 1. This bill, have receiving the requisite constitutional majority, is thereby passed. Mr. Secretary, if you'll read House Bill 906.
House Bill 906 by Representative Dempsey the 13th and others. The bill will be titled Enactment Article 4 of Chapter 18 of Title 50 of the OCGA relating to inspection of public records so as to exclude public disclosure of personal information of certain foster parents or former foster parents and for other purposes. Amendment 1 by Senator Tillery of the 19th and others offers the following amendment. Amend HB 906 by deleting line 4 and inserting in lieu thereof the following. Provide for an effective date to repeal conflicting laws and for other purposes by replacing title with title on line 7 by inserting between lines 22 and 23 the following. This act shall become effective upon its approval by the governor upon its becoming law. Without such approval, section 3. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Call upon the senator from the 13th to present the bill. Senator from the 18th, beg your pardon. Present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. I bring to you a pretty simple bill. This is House Bill 906. The problem that this bill seeks to address is currently the public can gain access to home telephone numbers, personal information, social security numbers of foster parents. And this problem was revealed to the agency recently when there was an en masse request for records on foster parents that included information that clearly ought not to be made public. So what this bill does is simply brings the information that can be provided or has to be provided on foster parents in line with the same information that has to be provided on state employees. So it extends to foster parents the protection that's already afforded to state employees by expanding the exemption. If you look on line 9, it begins with relating to when the public disclosure is not required. And then it begins with line 10, reading on through the end, so that that information is not required in case there's a request made to the state for this sensitive foster parent information. This removes the potential hurdle that we have in recruiting foster parents, as we've heard earlier this year with our adoption bill and the significant problem we have with too many children in foster care and not enough parents that are willing to be foster parents. This will simply remove one of those impediments and disincentives from that. Protecting state employees' personal information has caused no problems with legitimate journalists seeking to report on operations of DFAC, so if you had any concerns that somehow this was too restrictive, it is not. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
There are no questions, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President.
You want to speak to your amendment?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. There is one friendly amendment offered by the senator from the 19th. It relates to the effective date of House Bill 906. It's not substantive, but it's something that was recommended based on the anticipated changes coming for multiple bills of this type, so it changes that date, the effective date upon the governor's signature. Thank you, Mr. President.
No questions.
Encourage your support for the bill and for the amendment. Thank you. I yield the will.
Thank you, Senator. The question is on the adoption of the amendment. Is there objection to the adoption of the amendment? Hearing none, the floor amendment is adopted. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall the main question now be put? Are there any objections? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass as amended? The question's on the passage of the bill. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. Mr. Secretary, if you unlock the machines. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 52, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Mr. Secretary, if you'll read House Bill 920.
House Bill 920 by Representative Dempsey, the 13th and others, the bill will be titled Enactment Article 1 of Chapter 8 of Title 19 of the CGA, relating to general provisions for adoption, so as to allow for the use of the Department's information concerning the parties to an adoption under certain circumstances and for other purposes. Amendment 1 by Senator Miller of the 40th offers the following amendment. Amend HB 920 by replacing line 21 with the following. Release under Article 4 of Chapter 18 of Title 50. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Call upon the Senator from the 40th to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a bill from DFACS that basically allows the Director of DFACS as well as the Office of the Child Advocate to access information on young people who were adopted out of the foster care system and then died or nearly died. And this happened, the reason this bill is being brought, DFACS had a difficult time getting information on a child that actually had died shortly thereafter. There is an amendment, and all it does in the code section, it simply clarifies that the Adoption Reunion Registry wouldn't be closed off by the language in the bill that maintains the seal on the adoption records. And that, too, was brought by the department. Happy to answer any questions.
There are no questions, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President.
The question's on the adoption of the amendment. Is there objection to the adoption of the amendment? Hearing none, the floor amendment is adopted. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall the main question now be put? Are there any other questions? The chair hears none. The main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass as amended? The question is on the passage of the bill as amended. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Opposed will vote nay. Mr. Secretary, if you'll unlock the machines. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 52, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Mr. Secretary, if you'll read House Bill 765.
House Bill 765 by Representative Thomas of the 56th and others, a bill we titled enacted in Chapter 6 of Title 40 of the OCGA relating to uniform rules of the road, so as to increase penalties for hit-and-run accidents that result in death or serious injury and for other purposes. Amendment 1 by Senator Kirk of the 13th and others offers the following amendment to amend HB 765 by changing Section 4 to read Chapter 6 of the Title 40 of the OCGA relating to uniform rules of the road is amended by revising Code Section 46-250 and for other purposes. Amendment 1A by Senator Kirk of the 13th and others offers the following amendment to Amendment 1 of House Bill 765 by adding on line 3 after driver's license suspension the following to provide for conditions related to wearing headphones or headsets and for other purposes. Amendment 2 by Senator Callister to the 46th and others offers the following amendment. Amend HB 765 by replacing lines 35 through 39 with the following. C. Any person who, without malice aforethought, causes an accident that results in bodily harm knowing leaves the scene of the accident in violation of subsection B of Code Section 46-270 and knows that such accident resulted in bodily harm commits the crime of serious injury by vehicle and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Call upon the senator from the 35th to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. HB 765 is legislation that would provide that anyone that causes an accident that results in the permanent bodily harm followed by a hit and run would be guilty of felony serious injury by vehicle and subject to a 1 through 10 year sentence. That's what it basically does. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. And it's a friendly amendment that we will accept. And we will be happy to accept it, and they can come up and explain their amendment if they would like. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. If there are none, I yield the well.
There are no questions, Senator.
Thank you.
I'd like to recognize Senator from the 13th.
President, I ask unanimous consent to withdraw Amendment 1 and 1A.
Is there objection? Hearing none. 1 and 1A are withdrawn. Thank you, Senator. Recognize Senator from the 46th. Speak to the amendment. Amendment number 2.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senators, this is an amendment that has been joined by the senator from the 13th as well as from the majority whip, the senator from the 22nd. It makes it a little clearer that you have to know that you've been involved in a collision, and you have to know that it has resulted in harm in order to be susceptible. It also reduces the punishment from, it's still a felony, from 1 to 5 years, since there is a separate statute that involves leaving the scene of an accident. If there's serious injury involved, can also result in 1 to 5 years. These could be charged as separate counts. The judge could still sentence you to a total of 10 years under this scenario. I think it makes it clear if somebody's going to be held liable for a felony that they know they've hurt somebody and have knowingly left the scene. Mr. President, if there are no questions, I'll yield the well, but I would encourage your support of Amendment 2.
Recognize the senator from the 33rd for a question. Senator from the 33rd, do you have a question? Your light is on. Senator from the 33rd, do you have a question? You do. Go ahead. You got a question? Oh. Senator from the 42nd has questions. Just a second.
Thank you. Will the senator yield?
I yield.
Senator, I am wondering how the standard of knowledge as it relates to the actual cause of bodily harm could be met. Wouldn't it be more appropriate to have a reasonable person standard? Because I don't know that you could ever prove actual knowledge of bodily harm. You could suspect it, maybe you should know it, but couldn't the defendant always say, I didn't know that? How shouldn't the reasonable person standard come into play here?
Well, it depends on how easily you want to make somebody a felon and put them in jail for 5 years. I don't think you should do it unless they know they've hurt somebody and leave that scene. And this came about because of a young child that was hit by a driver. He was a pedestrian, and the driver left the scene. Now, you know if you have hit a pedestrian and they're laying on the ground that they've been seriously injured, and you should know you've hit them.
I just think that most defense attorneys would right away attempt to claim otherwise. And when you've made the standard knowing, you'd have to be able to prove it. And I think you've made it almost insurmountable if you're not going to elicit the reasonable person standard. There'll always be some doubt that they actually knew. Maybe they could say, you could come up with all sorts of things.
Maybe, but that's the reason this bill is brought. Because somebody hit a child, knew they were injured laying on the side of the road and left. And that seems more egregious than just being an accident and leaving the scene without knowing that. So I feel like it's important. There's already a statute that covers leaving the scene of an accident. That does not have this knowledge requirement in it. So you can still get a conviction for that offense, but I don't think we ought to be piling on with another 1 to 5 years unless they know they've hurt somebody. I can envision a minor collision of an accident. The drivers get out and the one says, well, my car looks okay, go ahead and go. And you leave the scene, and later they develop whiplash the next morning and get medical bills or, you know, have a concussion or whatever. That doesn't seem they should lock you away for 5 years for that when you didn't know the person was even hurt.
Well, I think that's, Senator, I understand what you're saying. I think that's why we typically have a reasonable person standard to take care of these hypotheticals where we can't all predict who's going to know what, and that's why that standard is so ubiquitous in law. Thank you for your answers.
Well, I don't really support the underlying bill, but I think this makes it better, and the minority whip agrees with me. Any other questions? I'm happy to answer them, or else I'll yield the well.
Senator from the 3rd.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just to follow up on the questions that were asked, the reasonable man standard is usually used in civil cases, correct?
That's correct.
And if you tried to put it in a criminal statute, it would be void for being vague.
You know, I hadn't thought of that. It could create some interpretive problems there.
Right, because it's not definite enough.
I think you're always asked to draw these as definite and specific as possible. So let's give the guidance that we need to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. No further questions.
Thank you. I yield the well.
Senator from the 22nd, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be brief, coming to speak about the amendment, which is a joint amendment, sort of a bipartisan amendment. But I do want to kind of address what may seem to be an issue. Already today, under 46-270, we have a hit and run statute, which actually does require knowledge, quite frankly. In 46-270, in Part 3, won't read all of it, you have an obligation to actually render aid, and that obligation kicks in if it is apparent that aid is needed. So certainly you already have to have knowledge there. So that is by implication. You also have an obligation to call law enforcement. You also have an obligation to call local law enforcement if it appears that the person is deceased or otherwise unable to communicate. So once again, by implication, knowledge is already there. But then forget about implication. Let's even take it a step further. In subsection B, which is important, because in the underlying bill, it tells you that you go to subsection B to determine a liability, or if you're guilty or not. Subsection B says, if such accident is the proximate cause of death or a serious injury, any person knowingly failing to give aid. Knowingly failing to give aid where it appears that the person has serious injury or death. So knowledge is already built into this statute. What we're doing with this amendment is basically guaranteeing that the knowledge part will be there. Once this underlying bill tells you to go to subsection B, which I just read, knowingly is there. Subsection B then takes you throughout the whole bill, where by implication knowledge is required. So knowingly is actually already required by law. I think what this does is basically put everybody on notice without a doubt that knowing is a standard. If there are no questions, Mr. President, I yield the well, but I will accept any questions.
There are no questions.
Thank you.
The question's on the adoption of the amendment. Is there objection to the adoption of the amendment? Hearing none, the floor amendment is adopted. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall the main question now be put? Are there any objections? The chair hears none. The main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass as amended? The question is on the passage of the bill as amended. All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. Mr. Secretary, if you unlock the machines. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 46, the nays are 7. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Mr. Secretary, if you'll read House Bill 995.
House Bill 995 by Representative Newton of the 123rd and others. The bill will be titled Enactment Article 1 of Chapter 8 of Title 36 of the OCGA relating to general provisions applicable to counties, municipal corporations, and other government entities, so as to provide for certain disclosures from consultants and other contractors who enter into contracts or arrangements with counties, municipal corporations, and other government entities to prepare or develop specifications or requirements for bids and for other purposes. Mr. President, Senate Committee on Economic Development and Tourism offers the following substitute to House Bill 995, the bill will be titled Enactment Article 1 of Chapter 8 of Title 36 of the OCGA relating general provisions applicable to counties, municipal corporations, and other governmental entities, so as to provide for certain agreements from consultants who enter into contracts or arrangements with counties, municipalities, and other governmental entities to prepare or develop specifications or requirements for bids and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Recognize the senator from the 24th to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a very good business bill. This House Bill 995 is a bill that is already in place on the state level. And simply what this bill does is make sure that consultants follow the guidelines on the local level of government so that we can make sure that the state of Georgia does business the best way possible, because we are the #1 state to do business. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a great bill and a great deal more for the great people of the great state of Georgia, and I ask you for your vote. Consider it.
Looky here. There are no questions.
I yield the will.
The question is on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to adoption of the committee substitute? Hearing none, the committee substitute is adopted. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is there objection to agreeing the report of the committee, which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall the main question now be put? Are there any objections? The chair hears none. Now that the main question is ordered. Shall this bill pass by substitute? The question is on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor vote yea. Those opposed vote nay. Mr. Secretary, unlock the machines. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 51, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. At this time, I recognize the senator from the 56th for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate agree to the House substitute to Senate Bill 328.
The senator has moved that the Senate agree to the House substitute to Senate Bill 328. Is there objection? Hearing none. Mr. Secretary, read the caption.
Senate Bill 328 by Senator Albers of the 56th and others. A bill will be titled Enactment Article 2 of Chapter 7 of Title 48 of the OCGA relating to imposition, rate, computation, and exemptions from state income tax, so as to provide for the expiration of certain income tax credits and for other purposes. That concludes the order.
I'm good. Recognize Senator from the 56th.
Thank you, Mr. President. It is early in the session to do a special action and agree, and let me explain why. You already passed Senate Bill 328 out of this body, which sunset out-of-date tax exemptions. However, when we did House Bill 918, which was the cleanup between the federal and the state as well as the reduction in the income tax, we did miss one minor item, which pertains to the GUILTI portion of the federal tax plan, which in summary takes businesses that have an international presence and make sure that they are not paying tax multiple times. This is consistent with what the federal tax plan was to make sure that we're bringing more business home and they're investing here locally. It is a simple cleaning measure, and it's time sensitive for people doing their taxes. If there are no questions, I will yield the will.
There are no questions, Senator. Senator, I'm sorry. You want to speak or you want to question? Senator 41st. You want to question or you want to speak?
Senator Yield.
I will yield.
What is the financial impact? Right now, we are collecting taxes in this regard. What's the impact of the state if we pass this?
It is a range of anywhere from 26 million to a positive of 5 million. Most of the time, people are actually not paying this now, but we believe that through the process of the way the both federal and state tax bill is done, it'll actually end up increasing revenue long term.
But it could be a $26 million cost?
Potentially, but in all of the look back and study that's been done at this point, most cases people were not paying this to begin with.
Further yield, Senator?
I will yield.
Was this issue discussed at all when it came through the Senate, or this a last minute arriving on an amendment on the floor of the House?
No, this was an issue that was found after House Bill 19 was passed by the Senate and the House, and the governor signed it into law. So this was brought up in the House Ways and Means Committee, and then passed through rules, passed through the House, and now for an agree here in the Senate.
So all this language that is being added to your bill was through the committee process in the House, added to a bill, and did have a hearing in committee?
That is correct, both subcommittee, full committee, and the House.
No further questions, Senator.
Thank you. I'd urge your favorable consideration.
The senator from the 56 has moved that the Senate agree to the House substitute of Senate Bill 328. All those in favor of the motion by the senator from the 56 will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. Mr. Secretary, if you'll unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 45, the nays are 9. This motion, having received the constitutional majority, is therefore adopted. Okay. Recognize Senator from the 56th for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 419 off the table.
Senator from the 56 has moved that we take House Bill 419 off the table. Is there objection? There is objection. All those in favor, rise, stand, and be counted. All those in favor of taking this bill off the table, rise, stand, and be counted. Rise, stand, and be counted. Reverse, 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 stand and be counted. We have the senator from the 31st, the 27th, and the 46th. The yeas are 34, the nays are 5. This bill has been taken off the table. Mr. Secretary, if you'll read the caption.
House Bill 419 by Representative Silcox of the 52nd and others, a bill entitled Enactment Chapter 60 to Title 36 of the OCGA relating to general provisions regarding local government provisions applicable to counties and municipal corporations so as to enable the further governing authority of certain counties to further regulate the use or ignition of consumer fireworks and for other purposes.
Stand by. I'm going to recognize these pages right quick. David, I'm going to recognize these pages while y'all are getting that straightened out. At this time, we would like to recognize the pages. Miss Nancy, will you bring the pages in that have stayed with us for the duration? Let's give them a big round of applause. Look out here, look out. Come on down, take a bow. Turn around, take a bow. Turn around, take a bow. There we go, turn around. Turn around, there we go. There we go. Thank you, young people, thank you. Now remember two things. Two more things, kids. Get out of here and we love you. Bye. Recognize the senator from the 56th. Read the amendment.
Amendment 4 by Senator Albers of the 56th and others offers the following amendment to amend the substitute to House Bill 419 by inserting on line 49 after January 1st, the last Saturday and Sunday in May. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Recognize the senator from the 56th to present the bill and speak to the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank the senator from the 45th, the 7th, and the 53rd for a compromise. We, in her amendment, remove Memorial Day. This will simply add the Friday and Saturday prior, so we have a beginning and end of the summer. Our grand compromise, I believe, is done. I'd ask you to favorably vote for this bill so we can move forward and give everybody a nice win. I'll yield the will.
Thank you, Senator. The question is on the adoption of the amendment number 5? Number 4. Amendment number 4. Is there objection? Hearing none, the amendment is adopted. The question is on the adoption of the committee substitute as amended. Is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute as amended? Hearing none, the committee substitute is adopted and as amended. All those, does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall the main question now be put? Are there any questions? The chair hears none. The main question is ordered. Shall the bill now pass by substitute? The question's on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. Mr. Secretary, if you unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 47, the nays are 4. This bill receiving the requisite constitutional majority is therefore passed. Mr. Secretary, read the announcements. I'd like to recognize the majority leader, the senator from the Classic City, for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate stand adjourned until 10 a.m. on Friday, March 23rd.
Read the announcements.
Rules will meet upon adjournment in 4:50. The Capitol Insurance and Labor was canceled. Public Safety upon adjournment of rules was canceled. Transportation was canceled. Education and Youth was canceled. Finance was canceled. Judiciary will meet 15 minutes after rules adjournment in 307 of the CLOB. That concludes the order.
Senator James has an announcement. Senator from the 35th has an announcement.
Thank you. I just wanted to remind you that Friday is Africa Diaspora Day. It's a Taste of Africa from 1 to 4 in the Rotunda, and in room 230 it will be a Taste of Africa food. So if you want to taste African food and you want to see African art, please go up and get food. And also, and if you want to wear your African attire or your scarf or your pin, please do on Friday. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator from the 36 has an announcement.
Colleagues, thank you, Mr. President. I just want to remind you that as we're in the Capitol tomorrow for our various meetings, conference committees, and finalization of our work for the year, come by and have some lunch, please, in LOB 307 at the invitation of the Georgia Working Families Legislative Caucus. There will be a criminal justice reform report and an update on the progress of legislation. That'll be at noon tomorrow, 307 LOB. The Trial Lawyers Association, the UAW, are the sponsors.
Thank you, Senator. The Majority Leader has moved that the Senate stand adjourned until Friday, March 23rd, 2018 at 10 a.m. Those in favor say yay. Those opposed? No. The yeas clearly have it. We stand adjourned.